Hey guys, tonight we drift softly into the quiet mists of medieval weddings, where candle flames flickered low against stone walls, and the air carried the faint scent of wild herbs and damp earth. Imagine the gentle hush of a chapel at twilight, vows whispered like secrets shared between shadows. As families gathered under flickering torchlight in halls long grown silent, we've wandered far from the clamor of modern days, slipping into a time when love was bound not by grand displays, but by ancient rites, woven with threads of superstition, land, and quiet endurance. Like, subscribe if these peaceful histories lull you into rest. And comment below where you're listening from and what time it is there, perhaps from a cozy bed in distant lands, as the clock chimes softly. Settle in now, let your eyelids grow heavy, as we explore the forgotten whispers of weddings in medieval times. From the first stirrings of betrothal to the fading echoes of the feast. First, the forgotten art of the betrothal. That quiet prelude to marriage where promises were sealed not with rings or roses, but with the solemn exchange of gloves or a simple clasp of hands. In the dim light of a lord's chamber, picture a young noblewoman, her gown of rough wool brushing against flagstone floors worn smooth by generations, standing before her father and the suitor's kin. In the 12th century, across the misty fields of England and the rugged hills of France, betrothals were contracts etched in parchment, often arranged while children were still playing with wooden dolls carved from orchard branches. The air would hum with the murmur of scribes' quills scratching over vellum, the ink sharp with the tang of oak galls, as dowries were tallied acres of fertile land yielding golden wheat, or chests of silver pennies glinting faintly in the hearth's glow. These were no hasty decisions, born of fleeting glances, but deliberations that stretched like the long shadows of yew trees over churchyards. A chronicle from the time of Henry II recounts a betrothal in 1160, where the future bride, a girl of 7 named Isabella, was promised to the son of a Norman baron. Her father, sensing the chill draught from an open window, draped a fur mantle over her shoulders, its softness a small comfort against the weight of destiny. The agreement specified that upon her reaching 12 summers, the union would be consummated, with lands passing hands like leaves drifting in an autumn breeze. Superstitions clung to these moments too. They believed that if a black cat crossed the path during negotiations, ill fortune would shadow. The Matso servants scattered salt along thresholds to ward off such omens. Daily life wove into these pacts with tender insistence. For peasant families, betrothals happened in the glow of kitchen fires, where the smell of baking bread mingled with the earthy aroma of turned soil from the fields. A man might offer a silver penny or a length of cloth dyed with woad's deep blue, symbols of his labor in the forge or loom. Women whispered prayers to Saint Agnes, patron of betrothed maidens, clutching rosaries strung with beads of amber that caught the firelight like trapped stars. And somehow amid the practicality, flickers of affection bloomed stolen glances. Across crowded market squares, where the air was thick with the scent of fresh rushes, strewn on floors to mask the mud. Expand this scene in your mind's quiet eye. The betrothal feast modest for common folk with ale, drawn from oaken barrels, its foam settling like morning mist. Elders recited lineages, voices low and rhythmic, tracing bloodlines back to Viking raiders or Roman settlers, ensuring no forbidden degrees of kinship tainted the bond. Church law, stern as winter frost, forbade unions closer than seventh cousins, with priests consulting genealogical rolls yellowed by time. One quirky forgotten fact emerges from the pipe rolls of 1195. A knight in Yorkshire forfeited 2 oxen for betrothing his daughter without lordly consent. The animals led away by bailiffs, under a sky heavy with rain, they lowing a mournful echo. Yet, not all were bound by such formality. In remote Scottish glens, where heather bloomed purple against granite crags, handfasting offered a trial marriage, hands clasped over a peat fire's glow for a year and a day. If harmony prevailed, knots were tied eternal. If not, paths parted like rivers diverging. This custom, rooted in older Celtic whispers, baffled canon lawyers who deemed it sinful concubinage. Yet it endured, practical as the woolen cloaks shielding lovers from Highland chills. Subtle humor lingers in the tales. Imagine the groom hungover from celebratory Usk Beatha fumbling his vows, only for the bride's kin to jest that true tests of love began with dawn's unforgiving light dot. As details unfold, consider this sensory tapestry, the crackle of parchment unrolled, the metallic taste of ceremonial wine sipped from shared cups, the faint mustiness of ancestral keepsakes presented as tokens. Archaeology from sites like Warham Percy unearths betrothal rings, simple bands of twisted wire, buried with their wearers, whispering of promises kept through plague and famine. In Italy's sun-warmed villas, betrothals dazzled with gifts of coral beads, believed to guard against the evil eye, their red glow like embers in twilight. But that leads us gently to the preparations for the wedding day itself, where households stirred slowly under dawn's pale veil, the air crisp, with dew-kissed herbs gathered at first light. Women rose before the rooster's call, their fingers nimble over looms and needles, crafting garlands of rosemary for remembrance and ivy for fidelity, twined with ribbons faded from years of use. For noble brides, seamstresses worked by candlelight in tapestry-hung chambers, stitching gowns of samite silk imported from distant Byzantium, its threads shimmering like moonlight on still water. The fabric heavy with gold work whispered against skin chilled by stone walls, while the scent of lye soap from recent baths lingered mixed with lavender sachets. Tucked into folds, peasant brides fared differently, their attire pieced from homespun linen dyed with madder root for a bride's blush-red kirtle, the color echoing blood's vital flow and fertility's promise. Chronicles from the 14th century, like Froissart's, describe a Burgundian wedding where the bride's hair, unbound symbol of maidenhood, was combed with ivory combs carved from walrus tusks, each stroke a prayer for fruitful years. Superstitions abounded. Nails must not be cut before the ceremony, lest the marriage be severed like clipped threads, and mirrors veiled to prevent vanity's curse. Grooms, too, prepared in quiet rituals. They bathed in wooden tubs filled from rain barrels, the water steaming faintly over hearth fires, scented with bay leaves for strength. A shave by a trusted kin, razor stropped on leather, left skin tingling in the chill air. In Germanic lands, the stag's antler was a favored token, ground to powder and mixed into ale for virility, a belief persisting from pagan hearths despite priests' frowns. One anecdote from the Paston Letters, 1460s England, tells of a groom gifting his bride a silver girdle, its buckle engraved with entwined hearts, only for her to wear it beneath her gown as secret warmth against uncertainties ahead. Food preparations unfolded like a slow dream. Ovens glowed in village commons, baking manchet loaves of fine white flour for the high table, while trenchers of coarse rye awaited the rest. Meats roasted on spits venison from forest hunts, its fat dripping to hiss in flames, filling the air with savory smoke. Spiced hippocras wine simmered, cloves and cinnamon floating like autumn leaves, to warm guests against evening's bite. For the poor, pottage bubbled in iron pots, thickened with barley and leeks pulled from frost-nipped gardens. Musicians tuned lutes and rebecks in corners, their strings humming softly, practicing airs that would drift through the hall like mist. Children scattered petals of cowslips and marigolds along paths, their small hands sticky with sap, giggling under watchful eyes. And in the church, priests dusted altars with linen cloths, arranging beeswax candles whose flames would dance without flicker, symbolizing eternal light. As the sun climbed lazily toward noon, nerves settled like dust after a cart's passing. Bridesmaids, clad in green for luck, helped veil the bride with a silken cloth, embroidered with knots unbreakable as true love. Groomsmen bore torches dipped in pitch, their smoke trailing like ghosts. Quirky facts surface in 13th century Spain. During reconquest fervor, weddings paused for mock combats, grooms proving valor with blunted swords, sweat beading on brows under Andalusian sun. These preparations, drawn out over days, built a rhythm soothing as a lullaby, each task a thread in the fabric of community. Sensory immersion deepens at the yeasty rise of dough, the sharp snip of shears on holly branches, the low chant of blessings invoking saints like Valentine, whose bones rested in reliquaries kissed for favored necks. Imagine waking to the wedding morning, the world hushed under a canopy of grey skies, church bells tolling slow and distant like echoes from another time. The bride rises in her solar, a chamber high in the keep, where tapestries of unicorns and huntsmen stir faintly in the draught. Her women attend her, fingers gentle as they lace her into her gown, the fabric cool against skin warmed by a brazier's coals. Breakfast is simple porridge of oats simmered with honey from wild hives, its sweetness a balm before the day's solemnity. Outside, the village stirs, cocks crow muffled through shuttered windows, and dew clings to thatched roofs like silver beads. The procession forms languidly, a ribbon of folk winding toward the church porch, where marriages were spoken before Mass. Under heaven's open gaze, brides walked barefoot over rushes strewn with herbs vervain for protection, fennel for strength, their damp coolness grounding each step. Grooms followed, arms laden with posies, faces shadowed by hoods against prying eyes. In France's Loire valleys, 11th century custom had the couple clasp a silver coin between palms, its edge biting softly, symbol of shared fortune. Church porches, weathered by rain, bore carvings of intertwined vines, reminders of life's entwinement. The priest, robed in linen stiff with starch, awaited with book in hand, his voice a murmur blending with wind sighing through yews. Vows were brief. I take thee, spoken thrice for emphasis. witnessed by kin whose breaths clouded the crisp air. No rings for all. Peasants exchanged love spoons, whittled from boxwood, hearts and keys intertwined in whimsical curls. Superstitions thickened the air like fog. The bride must enter right foot first, lest discord follow. Grooms tossed grain to ensure plenty. One chronicle from 1280, the Anglo-Norman Vie de Saint Audrey, notes a bride fainting from nerves, revived with rosemary water, its piney scent clearing her head. Humor subtly gleams. Priests sometimes stumbled over Latin, blaming ale from the night before. Yet the rite held firm. Inside the church now, for the nuptial mass, shadows pooled under vaulted arches, incense curling like smoke from dragon's breath, candles guttered, wax dripping to pool on stone ledges. The couple knelt on cushions stuffed with wool, spines straight despite the chill seeping through. Prayers droned, invoking God's blessing, with readings from Song of Songs, its verses of love like honey slow dripping. The mass unfolded with a rhythm as steady as the drip of water in ancient cisterns. The priest's chants weaving through the nave like threads of silver smoke. Altar boys swung censers, frankincense and myrrh heavy in the air, their chains clinking softly against stone. The couple received the nuptialis benedictio, hands joined over a stole of embroidered silk. The fabrics weave rough under fingertips chilled by morning damp. Bells pealed then, not with clamor, but a deep, resonant toll that vibrated through ribs and settled in bones, announcing the union to fields where laborers paused, hoes resting on shoulders to murmur blessings. From the church, the procession drifted back to the manor or village green, paths lined with folk offering sprigs of yarrow for enduring love, its feathery leaves brushing skirts like whispers. For nobles, hawkers circled with ribbons and sweetmeats, their calls muted. Voice is blending with the rustle of leaves overhead. Peasants shared cider from leather jacks, its tartness cutting through the incense's lingering haze. One forgotten quirk from a 14th century Icelandic saga. Grooms in the north kissed the church door upon leaving, believing it sealed fidelity, lips brushing oak scarred by centuries of hands. But that leads us gently to the wedding feast, where long tables groaned under oaken boards in great halls, firelight dancing on pewter mugs and wooden bowls carved with simple runes. The air thickened with the rich perfume of roasting boar, its crackling skin basted with honey and sage, juices sizzling into trenchers below. Venison haunches turned on spits, manned by scullions, sweat beading on their brows. As they turned cranks, with steady arms the meat's aroma mingling with fresh-baked subtleties loaves, sculpted into castles or swans gilded with saffron paste that gleamed like captured sunlight. Seating followed rank, a quiet hierarchy. The couple at the high table on benches cushioned with sheepskins, their warmth a comfort against draughts whispering down chimney flues. Below, knights in party-colored tunics, ladies with veils pinned by brooches of jet, villagers in smocks patched with homespun. Servants moved like shadows, bearing removes in procession. First fishes from river nets, pike poached in wine with almonds ground to milky cream, then fowl. Herons and cranes plucked and stuffed with quinces, their flesh tender as dawn clouds. Wine flowed from leather bladders, spiced Hippocra's warming throats against the hall's chill. its cloves pricking the tongue like tiny stars. Ale for the common folk, small beer light as mist, foam clinging to mustaches like morning dew. Music drifted in waves, harpers plucking lutes with ivory picks, their notes low and lilting. Tales of Tristan and Isolde sung in voices smooth as river stones. Dancers later formed branzels, hands linked in slow circles, skirts swirling to reveal embroidered hems, feet stamping rhythms muffled by rushes strewn thick with meadowsweet. Superstitions flavored the board. The bride broke the first loaf. Crumbs scattered for birds to carry good fortune afar. Grooms nailed horseshoes to doorposts post-feast, iron warding evil. Anecdotes abound. A 1380s account from Chaucer's Circle describes a feast where a pie burst open, releasing live blackbirds that fluttered to rafters. Guests laughing softly as feathers drifted like snow. Subtle sarcasm colors peasant weddings. Grandees wasted gold on peacocks, while serfs savored pottage of peas and bacon rind. The true feast of earth, as one monk wryly noted, stomach rumbling enviously. Sensory details envelop you. The greasy sheen on fingers from capon legs torn by hand. The crunch of gingerbread chews flavored with rose water. The faint char of over-roasted chestnuts cracked on knees. Children darted under tables for fallen scraps. Their giggles lost in the murmur of talk lineages boasted, dowries recounted. Futures pondered over emptied flagons. In Italy's city-states, feasts dazzled with sugar-plate sculptures of saints, fragile as dreams, melting under breath. Yet, as platters emptied and shadows lengthened over flagstones, eyes grew heavy with wine and warmth, conversations slowing to drowsy drifts. Trestles folded away by yawning servants, rushes swept into corners where dogs licked remnants, tails thumping lazily as the sun dipped lower, casting amber glows through arrow-slit windows. We turned softly to the bedding ceremony, that intimate rite veiled in custom and candlelight, where the marriage's final seal was set amid murmurs and merriment. The hall cleared partially, screens drawn round the bridal chamber, a curtained alcove heavy with the scent of dried lavender and thyme stuffed into bolsters. Guests gathered, faces flushed from revelry, as the couple was led forth by kin bridesmaids unbinding the bride's hair, letting golden tresses cascade like wheat over pillows plumped with goose down. In noble houses, the lord and lady inspected the bed. Sheets of finest Holbein linen turned back to reveal a mattress strewn with rose petals and fennel, their fragrance rising sweet and spicy. Blessings were spoken, holy water sprinkled with juniper twigs, droplets catching light like diamonds. The priest, if present, invoked Saint Cosmas for potency, his Latin rolling low. For peasants, the rite was simpler bed in the hall's corner, curtains of wool-dyed russet, kin tossing hops for dreams of bounty. Humor tinged the awkwardness. Attendants lifted the sheets high, waving them like banners to air the marriage. Jests whispered about fertility, blushes hidden in twilight. A 13th century fabliau recounts a groom, tipsy, tumbling into the rushes instead, rescued amid laughter soft as falling leaves. Superstitions ruled. No knots in sheets lest they bind the union too tightly. Brides drank tansy ale for conception, its bitter tang a promise of heirs. Doors closed then, murmurs fading to silence, broken only by the crackle of banked fires and wind sighing through. Thatch. Outside, watchmen patrolled with lanterns, their glow bobbing like willow the wisps. Inside, the world narrowed to two fabrics rustling, breaths mingling, the first night unfolding in the hush of history. But that leads us gently to the superstitions and omens that wove through every thread of these weddings. Invisible currents as real as the stones beneath feet. From dawn's first blush, signs were sought in the natural world, harbingers shaping hopes and fears. A bride spotting a robin on her path meant joy unending, its red breast like a heart laid bare. An owl's hoot at noon foretold widowhood, prompting frantic prayers to scatter our feathers burned for countercharm. Herbs held power profound rosemary crowns for memory undimmed by years, its needle leaves pricking scalps gently. Ivy garlands twisted leftward against the devil's right-hand path. In Germanic forests, runes carved on birch bark were buried under thresholds. Symbols for harmony etched with knives honed on whetstones singing softly. Church frowned, yet folk persisted. Priests blessed rings with salt and spittle, invoking exorcism against demons jealous of mortal bonds. Quirky forgotten facts delight. 12th century Welsh custom had brides bake soul cakes, laced with caraway seeds, offered to bees for sweet marriage like honeycombs dripping gold. Failure brought sour hives, sour unions. In Byzantine-influenced Sicily, mirrors shattered accidentally were gathered, shards sewn into hems to reflect away envy. Anecdotes whisper from margins of 1420s diary notes a groom delaying vows for a rainbow's arc, deemed perfect omen. Guests waiting in drizzle as clouds parted lazily. Where the rule fates, sun through clouds promised plenty, rain fertility's tears, thunder, discords rumble. Animals factored to spiders weaving webs over doors wove luck. Black cats circled thrice, thrice cursed. Sensory echoes linger. The acrid smoke of smudged bundles waved over couples, sage cleansing auras. The metallic bite of charms worn undergowns, lead amulets stamped with zodiac signs. Even dreams preceding the day were past knots untied meant smooth paths. Falling teeth loss of kin. Midwives brewed possets of mugwort for prophetic visions, steam rising veils like. Subtle sarcasm in chronicles. Scholars mocked peasant portents, yet nobles consulted astrologers. Charts drawn with inks from lapis lazuli, blue as midnight skies. These beliefs, layered like sediment in riverbeds, endured through plagues and wars. A quiet faith binding fragile human ties. Next, imagine the differences between noble and peasant weddings. Worlds apart yet echoing the same ancient drumbeat of survival and solace. For nobles, ceremonies sprawled across manors ringed by moats still as glass. Banners limp in still air, emblazoned with leopards or lions rampant. Preparations spanned weeks, envoys riding palfreys cloaked in velvet caparisons, bearing gifts wrapped in silks from Lucca looms, threads fine as spider silk. The bride's gown, sewn by Italian masters, flowed in crimson velvet furred with ermine tails. White as fresh snow, costing fortunes in spices traded for gold. Jewels dripped rubies from eastern mines set in filigree, glowing like embers against pale throats. Feasts rivaled coronations, swans baked whole, beaks gilded, eyes of cloves. Subtleties towering 3 feet, castles with drawbridges of marchbane. Minstrels from Provence sang cansos in tongues lilting as fountains, lutes adorned with ivory frets. Contrast the peasant rite, huddled in churchyards under skies vast and indifferent, bride in kirtle of warmer wool, coarse yet warm, dyed with weld for sunny yellow. No jewels, but a chaplet of field flowers, daisies nodding gently, symbolizing innocence. The feast, a shared ox-roasted communal, divided by lot with knives keen on bone, ale from the Lord's grudging grant, barley malted in clay kilns. Nobles travelled by litter slung between mules, velvet cushions sinking under weight, peasants afoot. Wooden patterns splashing mud. Beddings for Highburn featured torchlit processions. Naked beneath sheets inspected by midwives with knowing nods. Common folk curtained quick. Privacy a luxury rarer than silver. Superstitions mirrored yet scaled nobles reed stars, with astrolabes of brass clicking softly, peasants' alcohols or lamb's birth defects. Anecdotes bridge divides. The past and letters reveal a Norfolk gentlewoman, wedding her daughter to a yeoman, blending world's fine wine-met trenchers, awkward yet enduring. Humour subtly gleams. Lords aped peasant dances for sport, stumbling in silks amid barnyard mirth. Yet common threads, bound, vows before God, feasts of earth's bounty, nights hoping for heirs amid straw-scented quiet. As twilight deepened into velvet night, painting the sky with strokes of indigo, and silver stars emerging like distant Londons, we drift toward regional whispers across medieval Europe, where customs bloomed as diversely as wildflowers and meadow drifts. In England's green and misty vales, weddings centered on the church porch under skies often weeping soft rains. The ground sodden with clay that clung to hems like reluctant lovers. Brides carried nosegays of southernwood and rue, their bitter scents believed to sharpen wits against enchantment. Fingers bruised from twisting stems resilient as the couples they blessed. The feast followed in timber halls with wattle-daub walls sweating condensation. Tables laden with frumenty sweetened by elderflower cordial gathered at Beltane's eve, its floral notes lingering on tongues like forgotten promises. France's lawyer chateau hosted more languid affairs, candle wax pooling in silver sconces shaped like fleur-de-lis, their flames steady against breezes perfumed by lawyer vineyards heavy with ripening grapes. Here, the crier announced bands from castle battlements, voice carrying over river mists like a heron's call, 3 Sundays ensuring no hidden impediments. Brides wore coifs of lace from Flanders, delicate as spider veils, pinned with pearls cultured in freshwater mussels dredged from streams. Feasts featured torteau fromage, wheels of goat cheese baked crisp, paired with verges sharp as autumn frost, while troubadours recited lays of courtly love, fingers dancing over cittern strings tuned to melancholy minors, venturing northward to Scandinavia's fjord-shadowed shores, where auroras sometimes painted wedding nights with ethereal greens. Rites blended Norse pagan echoes with Christian overlays. Handfasting persisted openly, couples binding wrists with linen cords dyed with lichens scraped from birch bark, knots tied over runestones etched with thorny runes for Thur's protection. Brides donned pleated aprons of wadmal, silver brooches clasping shawls fringed with horsehair, clinking softly with each step over pebbled paths. Feasts roared with mead from hives raided by bears, horns carved from aurochs wiped clean of last winter's mead. Songs of skalds recounting heroic lineages amid crackling Yule logs. In Italy's sun-baked hill towns, from Tuscany's olive groves to Venice's lagoon whispers, opulence reigned. Florentine brides processed under canopies of white damask held by pages in azure livery. Streets strewn with jasmine petals whose cloying sweetness mingled with canal brine. Rings exchanged were fedi, interlocking bands symbolizing eternity. Forged in workshops where hammers rang rhythmic as heartbeats on gold softened. By repeated unyielding fires, banquets overflowed with pan vapoto spiced cakes, almonds and peppercorns grinding under teeth, washed with vernaccia wine golden as the domes overhead. One quirky fact from Boccaccio's tales, a groom in 14th century Siena gifted his bride a pomander of ambergris, its musky perfume warding plague-scented airs during wedding dances. Spain's Reconquista lands infused rites with Moorish elegance and frontier grit. In Castel's arid plateaus, couples circled a fire of olive branches 3 times, flames leaping like desert spirits, echoing Visigothic holdovers. Brides veiled in mantillas of black lace, embroidered with gold thread from Granada looms captured in war, eyes mysterious through folds. Feasts savored arrows con pollo, saffron staining rice sunset hues, with Moorish sweets of honey and sesame crunching sweetly. Superstitions borrowed from Al-Andalus, figs split open revealing even seeds promised twins. Odd numbers barren years. Eastern Europe's Slavic realms, amid birch forests sighing in wind, featured Korovai wedding breads towering as pagodas, woven from dough adorned with periwinkle for fidelity, baked in communal ovens whose heat-baked cheeks rosy. Grooms wrestled matchmakers' friends in ritual bouts, grapples ending in laughter, and shared kvass fermented from rye, its yeasty tang grounding earthy joys. These variations, like rivers feeding one sea, shared the quiet pulse of human longing amid stone and soil. But that leads us gently to the role of the church and its stern yet shaping hand over these unions, where priests stood as gatekeepers between earthly desires and heavenly decree, their tonsured heads gleaming under chancel arches like pale moons. From the 12th century's Fourth Lateran Council, marriages became sacraments, indelible as baptism's waters, demanding free consent witnessed publicly lest clandestine unions spawned bastards' claims on lands. Bands cried thrice from pulpits carved with grapevines symbolizing Christ's blood, voices echoing off nave walls damp with condensation, ensuring no consanguinity fouled the bond dispensation fees. To Rome-greased palms in the curia, parchments sealed with lead bowls heavy as fate. Priests prepared couples in confessionals dim as forest glades, absolving premarital sins whispered through grilles pierced like latticework. Incense veiling blushes. The nuptial mass featured the verba di futuro, I will take thee, spoken in the porches shelter. Rain pattering on slate roofs like impatient fingers, followed by verba di presenti sealing the deed. Rings blessed with charism oil slick and scented of olives, slid onto fingers chilled by rites solemnity. Church law clashed with folkways, handfasting condemned as fornication, yet tolerated in fringes where bishops' eyes reached less far than ravens' wings. Tithes-funded weddings indirectly wax for candles from apiaries taxed. Altar wines from lordly vineyards. Anecdotes from visitation records amuse subtly. A 1290s Yorkshire priest, caught bedding the bride before vows, was defrocked, his flock murmuring that heaven's laws bend for earthly needs. For nobles, papal bulls arrived by courier palfrey, vellum rolled in leather tubes greased against damp. Peasants knelt on rush mats worn threadbare. Vows in vernacular, stumbling over Latin phrases memorized by rote. Superstitions crept in relics kissed for potency. Bones of martyrs in silver reliquaries cool against lips. Sensory immersion, the musty papery scent of missals illuminated with lapis blues. The chime of Sanctus bells rung thrice, silver tongues vibrating air thick with beeswax smoke. Yet church influence wove mercy to widows remarrying under protection. Ailments rare as hen's teeth for impotence proven by cold bed trials overseen by matrons. With stern nods, necks, whispers of love and romance peeked through the pragmatic veil. Rare blooms and soil tilled for alliances and heirs, yet tender as dew on rose thorns. Courtly love, born in 12th century Aquitaine's troubadour courts, idealized ladies as distant stars. Knights composing tensos sung under balcony moonlights. Lute's melancholy strains floating over castle moats. Eleanor of Aquitaine, wedding Louis VII, then Henry II, embodied this her courts at porches hosted Finnemore's poets praising chaste devotion. Verses copied on vellum scented with attar of roses. Peasant romances flickered in ballads like The Two Sisters, lovers meeting at fair well-sides, hands brushing over shared buckets cold from depths, promises exchanged amid water's ripple. Chronicles note stolen kisses in haylofts redolent of drying clover. Hearts pounding like war drums muffled by straw. One forgotten gem from the Roman de Laro's allegorical dreamscape depicts love as a garden walled with hazel. Roses plucked at peril of thorns, drawing blood symbolic of passion's price. Weddings rarely romantic, betrothals first, affection ripening later like late apples. Yet anecdotes endure a 14th century Devon serf eloped with his beloved, hiding in forest hollows where moss-carpeted floors soft as feathers. Wed clandestinely by wandering friar before lordly wrath. Humor subtly gleams. Knights swore fealty to ladies' feet, kissing slippers embroidered with pearls, only to trip in tourneys distracted by glances. Church extolled companionship over lust. Proverbs 31's virtuous wife praised in sermons droning like bees. Gifts spoke silent loves, posy rings engraved inside with mottos, in thee my joy. Read by firelight, gold warming fingers entwined. These threads, fragile yet persistent, softened the iron of duty. As embers of these tales glow low, we turn softly to scandals and mishaps that shadowed even sacred days. Human frailties blooming amid solemnity like weeds in garden pots. Impotence trials, most intimate ordeals. Saw grooms examined by midwives in chambers hung with herb bundles drying upside down. Their fingers probing with clinical detachment, sense of sage masking awkward airs. A 13th century Paris case dragged to ecclesiastical court. Husband failed 7 nights trial. Marriage annulled amid whispers. He remarrying swiftly while she entered convent. Veil hiding blushes eternal. Bigamy surfaced rarely, but sensationally chronicles like Matthew Paris recount a night wedding. Twice in one summer. First wife poisoning his ale with belladonna, its bitter foam betraying her before justices. Trials featured witnesses' testimonies rolling like river stones. He bedded her thrice weekly, averred neighbors peering through shutters at candlelit windows. Elopements defied lords' lovers fleeing to Gretna's blacksmith forges, where anvils rang hasty vows, sparks flying like stars fallen to earth. Punishments varied, fines in silver marks, or worse, ducking stools plunging into icy village ponds. Women sputtering vows of fidelity anew, superstitions gone awry amused, a bride stepping left foot first, union dissolving in squabbles foretold, grooms ignoring black cats, crops failing as if cursed. One quirky mishap from 1412 Flanders, feast peas birds escaped prematurely, fouling lord's beard with droppings, banquet dissolving in muffled guffaws, marriage enduring despite omen, divorces, church forbidden save annulment, saw desperate measures claims of coercion, impotence, consanguinity unearthed late. Froissart describes a Burgundian lady fleeing to abbey, husband pursuing with bribes to abbess, her stone walls echoing pleas long into night. These shadows, cast long by hearth fires, remind fragility beneath festivity's glow, drifting now through the haze of morning after, where dawn light filtered pale through horn window panes, casting elongated shadows across disheveled rushes matted with spilled mead and trampled petals. The newlyweds stirred to a world subtly shifted. Servants entered with hushed steps, bearing ewers of warm water scented with chamomile plucked from dew-heavy gardens, steam rising like morning prayers. The bride, hair tousled as wine-druffled wheat, sipped caudle from silver bowls ale thickened with egg yolks and sack posset, its creamy warmth soothing throats raw from night's vows and songs. Grooms stretched limbs heavy with revelry, faces shadowed by stubble soft as down, donning fresh shirts of linen bleached on river grass. Customs marked this threshold day with quiet rites. In English manners, the couple broke fast publicly, sharing a loaf of bridal cake baked with caraway seeds for fidelity, crumbs tossed to chickens whose clucks promised prosperous flocks. Guests offered morning gifts, chests of linen or silver spoons engraved with intertwined initials, their cool metal handed over with murmured blessings. For peasants, the rite was thriftier, a shared horn of milk from the bride's first milking, warm and frothy, symbolizing nurture's flow. Superstitions lingered, a mirror held to the bride's face revealing clear reflection meant long life. Clouded glass, early widowhood, prompting frantic polishing with lamb's wool. Anecdotes from manor rolls whisper of awkward graces. A 1370s Oxfordshire groom. Discover the bed alone after fleeing nerves. Find a shilling for cowardice in connubium. Laughter rippling through hall like brook over pebbles. Sensory echoes envelop the yeasty tang of rising dough for second-day loaves. The faint musk of unwashed linens piled for laundering in Ashley. The lowing of cows led to pasture under skies clearing to blue. Church bells tolled terse, summoning the pair to Mass Dei Gratiarum. Thanks offered on prie-dieu cushioned with velvet frayed at edges. Incense curling anew like yesterday's memories. Priests anointed brows with oil of catechumens, slick and olive-scented, sealing the union's sanctity. But that leads us gently to the economic undercurrents. the cold calculus of dowries and inheritances that underpinned these tender moments. Parchments unrolled by firelight revealing ledgers in clerks' crabbed hands. For noble brides, dowries swelled like ripening orchards' manors, yielding wool from merino sheep shorn in spring. Their fleeces carded soft as clouds, vineyards pressing wine ruby as garnets. A 12th century charter from Anjou details Matilda's portion. 3 vills, mills grinding rye with stones worn to hollows, plus 200 silver marks from Jewish moneylenders' tallies. Interest compounding like frost on window lattices. Grooms brought countergifts, mourning gifts secured by enfeoffment. Lands held in jointure for widows' security pastures. Where ewes lambed under watchful shepherds' crooks. Peasant dowries mirrored humbly, a cow with calf at foot, its udder heavy with milk. Feather beds stuffed from moulted geese, ticking sewn with bone needles. Chronicles note haggling in solar chambers, air thick with candle smoke and tension. Fathers weighing scales balanced with groats stamped by long-dead kings. Church skimmed tithes best ewes lamb, finest sheaf while lords claimed heriot. Dead tenants best beast led away hooves clopping mournfully. Quirky facts emerge. 14th century Icelanders tallied dowries in ells of vadmal cloth, measured arm to fingertip on bridegroom's spans, ensuring fair measure amid gales rattling turf roofs, subtle sarcasm in monkish margins. Loves, price in pounds, shillings, pence, scrawled beside romantic verses. Yet humanity pierced ledgers, a past-in widow defending her dower against grasping kin. Parchments clutched like shields in a sighs, courts echoing with advocates' drone. Sensory details grounded. The crinkle of wax seals broken, inkwell's metallic reek. Coins clinking into coffers like rain on thatch. These transactions, prosaic as ploughing furrows, ensured survival's quiet rhythm. Next, envision children's place in these tapestry weddings. Tiny threads weaving future generations amid adult solemnities. Their presence a promise of continuity like seeds sown in autumn tilth. Infants swaddled tight as parcels rocked in wooden cradles carved with doves. Nursed by wet nurses whose milk smelled faintly of garlic from evening pottages. Toddlers, in smocks stiff with porridge stains, toddled under tables snatching crusts. Fingers sticky with honey from broken combs. Older children bore rolls with earnest gravity flower girls scattering rue and rosemary. Petals bruised releasing piney scents. Page boys holding bride trains. Velvet folds whispering over stone. Small hands gripping silk with white-knuckled focus. In noble halls, wards served as caberas, ewers heavy as dreams. Wine splashing ruby arcs into flagons chased with heraldic beasts. Superstitions cradled them. Brides gifted choral rattles etched with crosses, believed to soothe teething gums and ward colic demons. Godparents whispered charms over locks of hair clipped pre-ceremony, buried under hearthstones for luck. Anecdotes charm a 13th century illumination shows a child releasing doves post-vows. Birds wheeling skyward like souls freed, only for one to perch on groom's shoulder. Omen of gentle rain. Feasts delighted young palates. Marchpane molded into animals. Crisp under milk teeth. Comfits sugared with violet petals. Bursts of floral sweet on tongues. Dances included infants bounced on knees to cradle songs droned low. Rhythms echoing lullabies of old. Humor glints. pages spilling wine on lords' laps, excused with tousled hair ruffles. Future knights in training. In peasant yards, children herded geese from pots, honks protesting. Older girls spun rushes into candles, wax dripping hot fingers. Weddings taught lineage elders recounting grandsires' matches over cider mugs. Voice is gravelly as millstones. Sensory immersion. Powdery scent of talc on babes' brows mopped with charism. Laughter bubbling like brooks. Small feet pattering on beaten earth. Their innocence softened edges of adult cares, eyes wide as moons reflecting half flames. As these vignettes fade like smoke-up chimneys, we turn softly to the music, dance, and merriment that pulsed quietly through halls. Notes and steps weaving spells of communal joy under rafter beams blackened by centuries of soot. Harpers tuned cytles in alcoves, pierwood bodies resonant as held breath. Strings plucked to test pitches humming like distant bees. Rebec's bowed slow airs, horsehair rosin dusting fingers. Tones mournful as willow branches trailing streams. Songs flowed first carols in rounds. Voice is blending peasant trebles with gravelly basses. Lyrics of greenwood lovers wandering dew paths hand in hand. Summer is ecumenin, echoed in May weddings, flutes piping over lark song outside. Troubadours for nobles sang pastorales, shepherd lads wooing maids by thorn-hedged folds. Rhythms swaying hips gently, dances commenced post-first remove. Carol circles linking hands damp with sweat. Steps measured as plough lines, skirts brushing calves in rustle soft as leaves. Bramsels grouped by age youths in energetic trebuchets leaping like fawns. Elders in sedate basses dances shuffling feet over rushes compressing sweetly. Decossy paired couples in lines bowing low, eyes locking over laced fingers. Instruments varied by realm bagpipes droning in Scottish glens. Bladders inflated with bellows sighs, shawms shrilling in Italian quarterly. Double reeds buzzing lips raw, quirky forgotten tune. The wedding of Sir Gawain. Fiddle scraping its jig while guests mimed tourney tilts with spoons as lances. Laughter muffled by hands. Superstitions tuned merriment dances leftward against Widdershins evil. Circles unbroken lest unions fracture. Sensory symphony. Rosin's piney bite. Footfalls thudding hollow boards. Breaths panting in candle-warmed air thick with body sweet and ale. Merriment peaked in mumming's guests masked as beasts or saints. Bells jingling on knees. Antics eliciting chuckles deep as cellars. As midnight neared, reels slowed to drifts, dancers leaning wearied on partners, pulses sensing like heartbeats entwined. These rhythms, primal as waves on shores, bound communities in night's embrace. But that leads us gently to widowhood and remarriage, the somber coda's too many a wedding song. Where black crepe veils whispered over faces lined by grief, hearths cold as winter streams. Widows mourned in cypress chapels, beads clicking through fingers calloused by distaffs. Prayers to saint unfor solace. Dour lands sustained them orchards heavy, with damsons pricked for jams, tart as tears. Rents collected by bailiffs doffing caps respectfully. Remarriage beckoned practical as seed time, church-urged unions renewed. Levirate echoes from scripture blessing brotherly succession. Widows chose second husbands for strength in plough teams or counsel in village moots. Betrothals swift as scythe strokes. Ceremonies muted no garlands. but Rosemary's sprigs pinned to gowns grey as doves. Vows spoken in naves dimmed by lent veils. Anecdotes endure. Marjorie Paston, widowed young, wed lawyer John. Their letters ink-stained testaments to partnership forged in Loss's forge. Superstitions clung widows stepping over husband's grave thrice pre-new vows. Earth-gritty undershoes, rings melted down, reformed with old gold blended new. Quirky fact: 15th century Breton custom had widows bake husband cakes shared at second feasts. Crumbs ensuring first spouse's spirit approved. Sensory pall, musty lavender in mourning chests, tolling passing bells vibrating bones. Widows' weeds rough as penance against skin. Yet life renewed new babes nursed amid blended broods. Hearths relit with gathered faggots crackling hopeful. These cycles, birth to earth, framed weddings' fragile frames. Necks, legacies of these medieval rites echoing faintly into our own shadowed nights. Threads pulled through times loom to modern veils and vows. Church porches yielded to altars, yet bans persist in published notices crisp as fresh newsprint. Rings endure, gold circles echoing twisted wire bands unearthed in abbey cloisters. Cakes tiered from subtleties sugar spires, white icing mimicking marchpane saints. Superstitions linger slyly, something old for kin, new for fortune, borrowed shielding envy. Blue for fidelity's hue, bedding jests softened to garter tosses, stockings silkier than Holbein linen. Regional flavors persist, Scottish handfasting in civil ceremonies. Wrists bound symbolic cords over registrar desks. Literature preserves whispers Chaucer's Miller's Tale mocks rustic rites. Fablio body echoes in wedding toasts. Archaeology yields treasures. York Minster digs reveal 14th century posy rings. Mottos faded yet legible by firelight. Love me always. Modern eyes see pragmatism unveil dowries as prenups. Feasts budgeted like removes. Yet core endures. Promises spoken under watchful skies. Communities gathering. Nights hoped fruitful. Subtle humor. Brides still veil mirrors, lest vanity peak. Grooms shave solemn. Razors whispering over lather. These echoes, soft as moth wings on glass, link us to ancestors' hearths. With these echoes settling like fine dust on ancient ledgers, let us linger a moment longer. In the herbal heart of medieval weddings, where gardens yielded secrets greener than envy leaves, and roots brewed into elixirs that promised harmonies bloom amid life's thorny paths. Apothecaries' corners in Castle Bailey yards overflowed with bundles of rosemary, its needle-fine leaves silvered by dew, gathered at dawn when spirits slept deepest. Brides wove crowns from these sprigs, thorns pricking scalps faintly like reminders of endurance. The herb's camphor scent sharpening senses dulled by fasting vigils. Rosemary for remembrance, they whispered, ensuring vows etched eternal as runes on standing stones weathered by salt winds. Ivy climbed walls of every manor chapel, tendrils twisting leftward in defiance of the sun's arc, symbolizing fidelity's cling. Garlands draped porch arches, vines cool and waxy under fingertips trailing during processions. Their berries black as midnight promising passion's depth. Fennel seeds, chewed during feasts, warmed bellies against rich meat's heaviness. Their anise tang believed to foster conception. midwives grinding them into pizzets sipped from horn cups polished smooth by generations of lips. One forgotten quirk from a 13th century herbaria illuminated in margins of lapis blue. Lovers exchanged fennel posies at betrothals, stems tied with red thread from spindle whorls, ensuring sweet breath for sweet words through wedded years. Vervain, purple spikes plucked under full moons from churchyard edges. Warded enchantment brides tucked blooms into bodices, petals wilting against heartbeats quickened by nerves, their honeyed fragrance mingling with lysope's clean bite. Rue's bitter leaves, blue-green as distant seas, sharpened eyesight against the evil eye, woven into bridesmaids' chaplets whose stems dripped sap-sticky as promises. Superstitions deepened roots, planting rosemary at the marriage threshold. Guaranteed growth mirroring loves, barren soil foretold strife, prompting frantic digging with spades turned edge up against demons. Anecdotes sprout like weeds. A 14th century Welsh chronicle recounts a bride whose fennel crown wilted mid-vows, hastily replaced with ivy from graveyard yews. Union enduring 60 winters despite omens. Sensory immersion unfolds, the crush of leaves releasing oils sharp as memory. Steam from herb-infused baths curling like ghosts in bedchambers. Tastes lingering bitter root chasing honeyed mead, grounding revelry's haze. In Italian apothecaries, where alchemists distilled essences in glass alembics bubbling softly, wedding waters blended lavender and orange blossom, poured over hands joined in blessing, petals floating like fallen stars. These green allies, practical as plowshares, poetic as dawn mist, wove nature's grace through human rites. But that leads us gently to the attire and adornments that draped these ceremonies in fabrics finer than spider silk and jewels heavy with lore. Each stitch a story told in thread. Noble brides donned kirtles of surcoat samite from Byzantine looms, silk dyed crimson with kermes insects crushed to powder fine as dust, the hue echoing life's blood and virgin roses. Over gowns flowed in velvet piled deep as moss, furred with mini vermin bellies white as fresh drifts. Tails dangling like lucky charms, brushing flagstones cool and uneven. Veils of cypress gauze, gossamer thin, pinned with crespines of gold wire netting pearls like dewdrops. Caught candlelight in prismatic gleams. Girdles cinched waists with chatelaines jangling keys symbolic of half-dominion. Buckles chased with lovers' knots unbreakable by hammer. Necklaces strung coral beads from Mediterranean depths, polished to glow warm as skin, believed to ease childbirth's pangs. Gloves of doeskin scented with civet, soft as whispers, exchanged at betrothals. Fingers sliding into warmth still holding donor's shape. Peasant finery paled yet shone. Best smocks of linen bleached snowy on meadows. Embroidered hems with blackwork stitches mimicking thorns guarding fruit. Borlets of straw-plaited tight crowned heads. Ribbons of worsted dyed with onion skins for saffron glow. Grooms' favored pourpoints padded with bombast cotton from Levant bales. Party-colored in heraldic quartered hues. Hose gartered with points of silk cord knotted fancy. Cloaks of frieze wool, heavy as shepherd's burdens. Clasped with Morse brooches of nielloed silver depicting saints' profiles stern as judges. For gear varied nobles and poulains pointed long as herons' bills, curling elegantly, Commons in turn shoes sold with barked and leather creaking softly. Quirky fact from Sumptuary Laws of 1363 Edward III. Peasants fined for excessive finery. One widow stripped of velvet coif at feast's gate. Fabric confiscated amid blushes soft as twilight. Superstitions adorned garb. Seams unpicked thrice for luck. Threads rewoven with prayers. No knots in laces lest they strangle harmony. Anecdotes gleam facade tales of a Burgundian bride's pearl chaplet unraveling mid-procession. Pearls rolling like tears, hastily restrung as guests knelt collecting. Marriage fruitful with 10 heirs, sensory tapestry. Velvets pile rasping palms. Metals chill yielding to skin warmth. Dyes faint mordant tang rising in warmed halls. These vestments, costly as ransoms, fragile as vows, cloaked vulnerability in splendor's hush. Next, imagine the feast's subtleties and confections. Edible sculptures rising like dreams from pastry crusts gilded flaky gold. Transforming boards into galleries of whimsy amid savory seriousness. Master bakers, faces flowered white as ghosts. Molded dough into towering edifices' castles, with crenellations of marchpane crumbling sweetly. Under forks of silver, drawbridges of pulled sugar strands glistening damp. Swans sculpted whole, beaks fashioned from clothes stuck precise. Wings arched from puff paste layers crisp as autumn leaves, baked in ovens vast as rooms. Heat blasting cheeks rosy, peacocks reassembled post-roast, plumage replumed in iridescent glory, tails fanned dramatic over platters ringed by quinces glazed umber. Subtleties told tales, biblical scenes in colored icing Adam and Eve beneath trees of spun sugar. Apples ruby as sin, or heraldic beasts rampant, lions couchant guarding trenchers of venison. Confections sweetened palates jaded by meats. Dragees of almonds coated crystal sugar crackling under teeth. Flavors rose, violet, anise blooming floral bursts. Hippocras jellies quivered in molds carved rose-shaped. Wine set with isinglass from sturgeon bladders, slicing to reveal strata ruby, gold, amber. Peasant sweets humbler yet heartfelt. Gingerbread men stamped with wooden molds, depicting couples entwined. Baked chewy spiced with cloves ground mortar pestle fine. Hung on ribbons for children to gnaw. Soul cakes round as full moons, caraway seeds embedded like stars. Shared post-feast for soul's ease. One forgotten delight from 15th century recipe rolls. Bride's posy of comfits in heart shapes. Sugar-piped initials melting on tongues warm with kisses. Humor subtly flavors tales. A subtlety castle collapsing mid-serve. Marchpane rubble burying lord's lap. Guests stifling mirth behind napkins linen stiff. Superstitions sugared them first bite to bride for fertility. Crumbs scattered east for son's blessing. Sensory indulgence. Sugars grain dissolving slow. Spices prickling noses. Crusts flaking buttery ontochins. These ephemeral arts, vanishing fork by fork, mirrored life's fleeting feast. As platters cleared to echoes of belches polite as whispers, we drift to games and pastimes that filled halls with laughter soft as falling petals. Diversions easing wine-heavy limbs before bedding's call. Blind man's buff commenced, groom's hooded linen over-eyes. Stumbling toward bride's giggles muffled by hands, arms flailing graceful as windmills in breeze. Guests linked in human knots, untangling without hands breaking, fingers brushing illicit thrills amid feigned protests. Dice games rolled on cloaks spread floorward. Bones carved knuckle white clattering prophecies 3 sixes for heirs aplenty. Snake eyes finds in kisses stolen. Card play for nobles, early tarot packs, painted vivid lovers trumps trumping fools. Wagers in favors whispered ear to ear. Children chased hoops of willow bent supple. Hoops rolling thwack against shins laughing. Quirky medieval diversion. Hot cockles, prone players smacked palms upturned. Guessing strikers by sting's nuance. Blushes blooming from impacts firm yet playful. In French courts, intellectual Jew-parted ladies veils with riddles. What binds tighter than iron, yet yields to a word? Answer, the marriage knot, solved amid applause like gentle rain. Superstitions guided plano whistlings lest winds carry woes. Games leftward circling luck. Anecdotes amuse. Chaucer's pilgrims at weddings mimed Miller's tale antics. Tubs tipped soaking unwary. Shrieks dissolving to chuckles damp. Sensory play. Dice cool ivory warming palms. Laughter vibrating rafters. Sweat beading brows in Ferreglo. These frolics, innocent as lambs, knit bonds looser than vows yet vital. But that leads us gently to the roles of matchmakers and go-betweens. Shadowy figures gliding betwixt hearths like foxes through mist. Tongues silver as the coins they earned. Village crones, faces seamed like walnut husks. Brewed gossip into proposals over fences mended reed tight. Eyes sharp as new scythes spotting eligible maids at wells, hollers straining ropes frayed. Thy plough needs a steady hand, they'd murmur to widowers, ponds itching for bridal ales foam. Noble go-betweens rode palfreys cloaked caparison fine, bearing tokens wrapped velvet gloves scented musk, rings nested boxes lacquered red. They dined at high tables post-success, trenchers piled generous, tales spun embellishing lineages like tapestry threads. In Slavic lands, Svoka matchmakers circled fires thrice chanting, skirts swirling smoke-scented, binding fates with knotted scarves unraveled dawn's light. Superstitions crowned them, go-betweens gifted salt cellars brimming pure crystals. Averting barren matches, spittle on thresholds they crossed warded rivals' curses. Quirky fact, 14th century German custom-paid matchmakers. In swallow eggs, porcelain baubles painted nest blue, fragile as alliances forged. Anecdotes whisper, a Norfolk go-between, Marjorie passed in kin, negotiating dowries ink-fingered, sealing pacts with kisses chaste as dew. Sensory craft, quills scratching tallies by rushlight, breath wine sweet in negotiations close. Leather scripts clinking fees earned sly. Their arts, unseen as roots feeding blooms, nurtured unions' growth. Necks, whispers from distant lands filter through trade winds. Islamic weddings, influences seeping via crusader ports. And Silk Road caravans, spices and silks carrying customs exotic as peacocks' cries. In Al-Andalus Alhambra gardens, fountains plashing marble bowls, brides hammam-bathed in rosewater steam, veiling giggles, henna hands patterned paisley vines symbolizing roots entwined. Knicker contracts read under filigree lanterns, casting starlight shadows. Ma bride gives scamels milk-churned golden butter, coins from caliphal mints stamped crescent moons. Feasts layered palavs jeweled rice gems, Lantagens slow-stewed clay pots, clay-cracked heat, sensed cinnamon saffron curling like gin smoke. Byzantine echoes gilded Orthodox rites, crowns exchanged atop silk pillows. Embroidered double-headed eagles circled thrice processions, priests chanting psalms, resonant domes. Jewish medieval weddings in York ghettos featured glass cups, shattered underboots, crunching crystal fortunes, shards, canopies, silk choppers, strung figs, pomegranates, fertilities, seeds. Viking rust brides, slashed wrists, blood mingling over mead horns, silver-rimmed. Scars, badges woven, saga verse. These crosscurrents, like rivers merging seas, enriched Europe's tapestry. As these global breaths fade, we turn softly to daily life post-wedding. Hearths kindled anew with faggots gathered dawn damp, rhythms settling like silt after floods. Brides rose pre-dawn milking keen udders veined blue. Milk foaming pails, wooden-hooped sloshing pots, butter churns. Grooms shouldered ploughs, furrows straight as vows. Oxen lowing mist breaths, clouding furred flanks. Shared labours wove days, wives carding wool spindles, whirring ceaseless. Husbands thatching roofs, reed bundles fragrant marsh. Evenings by trestles mended candles, guttering wax tears. Tails swapped over cheese, wheels rind veined. Children trail skirts, learning looms, shuttle clacks, rhythmic hearts. Superstitions seasoned routine. First loaf hearthside broken shared, crusts birds ensuring plenty. Wash water poured cross thresholds warding strife. Anecdotes endure peasant couples farming jointures through black death. Fields fallow yet love furrowed deep. Sensory domesticity. Bread ovens yeasty bloom. Wool grease fingers slick. Fire crackle underscoring breaths sensed sleep. These quiet years, unchronicled as grass growth, fulfilled weddings promise. When the bells of memory fall still, what remains is the hush between heartbeats. That space where history rests. The great halls crumble, the banners fade, and yet, across the centuries, a faint warmth endures. It hums beneath ruined arches, in meadows that once heard laughter, in the cracked tiles where brides once stepped. Perhaps that is what makes the study of old weddings so strangely peaceful. They are not grand events preserved in marble, but living sighs caught in dust and parchment. They tell of how humans, in every age, sought order amid chaos, how they reached for one another under uncertain skies, binding hands in the belief that companionship might soften the world's edge. In an abbey long abandoned, a single carved heart still hides behind ivy leaves, initials worn smooth by rain. Scholars cannot name the lovers, the date has eroded from the stone. But somehow, even through centuries of silence, the tenderness remains. On certain mornings, when mist drifts low and doves murmur in eaves, you could almost imagine the echo of a vow whispered there. The historian's work, if it can be called work, is only to listen for those echoes, to press an ear against the hollow places of time and hear the faint murmur of lives once bright and brief. Each fragment, a bridal ring unearthed by plowshare, a line scrawled in a monk's margin, a veil fragment turned to threadbare dust, becomes a syllable in humanity as endless prayer for connection. And in that way, medieval weddings were never truly about kings or priests or property. They were about the small, eternal wish that our days might mean something beside another's light. The wish that someone, somewhere, might remember us kindly, even if only as a name on weathered stone, or a voice faint as wind through tapestries. Listen now. The scene fades. The hall empties. The last candle gutters, its wax pooling like spilled moonlight outside. The night breathes over quiet earth. Stars wheel slow above sleeping fields. The bride and groom of our imagining vanish back into history's dark, leaving only footprints on the threshold, faint depressions in cooled dust almost erased by dawn's first sigh. So let them rest there. Let the centuries fold gently over them, as soft as river silt. Somewhere, a new day begins, and another couple, unaware of their long lineage, stands in borrowed light and speaks the same old words. The pattern continues, generation upon generation, voice upon voice, the same melody rising in new mouths, as constant as the sea against the shore. We have wandered tonight through candle smoke and meadow wind, through vows and laughter and superstition. Now the hour bends toward silence. If your eyes are heavy, let them close. If your mind still hums, let it drift with the bells receding in the distance. Thank you for walking one last time through the dim corridors of history. Like, subscribe, if the quiet stories keep you company in the dark. And until next time, may the road home be soft beneath your dreams. Good night.